Hello and welcome to another video. One of the most popular reasons why people don't switch to Linux is the lack of availability of certain proprietary creative applications on the platform. So I think that this is, in the majority of the cases, is really just an excuse and not a valid reason, because I would think that people are just not really aware of the open source alternatives, and also they usually highly over exaggerate the kind of functionality they need. Maybe what they are actually doing with these creative applications could be done with other free and open source programs, but they still decide to use the proprietary ones because they think like, oh, maybe I will need once this kind of fancy function that is only available here, or there are some of these very specific effects that are only available on these proprietary platforms, and they don't think about whether there is an alternative to those things in the free and open source software. And so for me, my hobby is video editing. I enjoy editing videos, and so that's why I decided to take a look at all the video editor software that are available in Arch Linux, either in the official repositories or in the AUR, and let's compare them, how they fare and what kind of functionality they provide for the average user. If you watch until the end, I will make top lists. I will kind of order them, and I will just give kind of a brief reason which one I find best and for what kind of application, what kind of level of your use case I would suggest you to use that program. So, disclaimer, I have previously used Blender. I used Blender a lot. In the last 6 years, Blender was my most used platform for video editing, and I also have some experience with Kdenlive, and I also tried a few other ones before, but didn't really use them. So when I will show you how I work with them, keep in mind that in case of Blender and Kdenlive, I come into these programs with some prior knowledge of the software and the workflow, but all the other ones I am taking a look at from the perspective of a total newbie who just downloaded it and just started working with it. So let's get into it. So this dummy project I will be making to test these video editors will contain videos which has different frame rates. I will also try to make a picture-in-picture with two videos overlaid on a third one with borders around the videos. I will use some kind of change in opacity to fade in and fade out these overlaid videos, and also do some crossfades between videos and images, and the images will be with different aspect ratios to see how we can work with those. And I will also do a scrolling through a panorama image in like a horizontal direction to see how we can animate this kind of transformations in the video editors. First I will use Blender, then I will try Kdenlive. So these are the two that I have already tried for extended periods. Then we are going to try Cinerella-GG Infinity, and then Flowblade, and we will do Olive, OpenShot, Pitivi, and Shotcut. So all of these are available on Arch Linux. Some of them are from the AUR and some are in the official repositories. So Blender is the one that I prefer. So this is my choice. It is very complicated, but I guess I got used to it, and this program is very, very high quality. Mainly it is used for 3D animations, but it is a perfectly good choice for a nonlinear video editing tool too. I'm using my regular 2-monitor setup. I have on my second monitor will have the preview of the video. So in Blender it is not easy to make this picture-in-picture with some kind of border between the pictures because I needed to utilize different strips for color and transforming everything. I needed to use some specific settings for offset and cropping, and then I used kind of transitioning with keyframing the opacity. As you can see here, this results in some kind of fade-in effect. It is a little bit difficult to handle images properly because it will just resize every image to exactly the size of the video, not respecting the original image's aspect ratio. And so because of that problem, it is not easy to make the image slideshow in Blender. The images I needed to transform them one by one to achieve the proper aspect ratio for the images, and I did animate one of the images as a panorama image. It just moves from the left to the right like we are looking around, and I also animated the opacity of these strips, so there is like a fading into each other, and we can see like how the opacity achieves the transformation by increasing the opacity of one of the images and then decreasing the other one. And so for the next part of the experiment, I will add a third video which has a different frame rate than the other videos, and that will cause some trouble in Blender, so we can see that the audio and the video tracks are not matched. And in general, when I work in Blender, I use just FFmpeg to resample the video, so each of my videos are in the same frame rate. But in this experiment, I wanted to see if just using Blender itself, is it possible to solve this. So let's take a look at that. So in Blender, to achieve my goal of using a video which had a different frame rate originally, I had to use this speed modifier, and I also had to do a lot of calculations by myself to calculate exactly from which point to use this strip and what should be the ratio. So in Blender, generally, I think still the best solution is just first convert each video to the same frame rate using FFmpeg or some other tool. So the next program we are looking at is going to be Kdenlive. So I will try to make the exact same video, or at least a very similar video in Kdenlive, and I will show you how it is done, how successful I am with it. This also supports my 2-monitor workflow, fortunately. So let's take a look at how long does it take to make the same video in Kdenlive. So when it comes to Kdenlive, editing this video was considerably simpler than doing it in Blender. My only gripe is that you have to resize these tracks individually if you want to stack up more and more, and I don't really find it easy to manage the this kind of the transformation things. Like the keyframing is a little less easy than in Blender, but in general the overall user experience was good. So I think it is a very convenient program to use if you have like a moderately complicated things to do but not too complicated things. So in my case, when I sometimes in my projects I added like several layers of maybe overlays like PNG images, and I wanted to animate them separately. In that case, due to the graph editor, Blender was much better for me than Kdenlive, but this is actually quite a good program. I had some trouble rendering the projects with this in a good quality, so I just rendered like frame by frame to a PNG image and created a video of it in Blender previously, but in general I can stand behind Kdenlive. It's a good choice. And one thing that is actually much better than Blender when animating things is the fade in and fade out, which can be just controlled right on the symbol of the clips with this red and green triangles, so you can manage that right here. You don't have to go separately to this kind of transformation window. In Blender, usually you are confined to do that in the graph editor, and that can be a little tiresome. So after Kdenlive, we are going to take a look at Cinerella-GG Infinity, which does not recommend you to use the AUR package, even though it is packaged in the AUR. It suggests you to use some custom repository that rolls out the new binary every month, and well, I don't like this. Let's just take a look how well this software operates, even just like whether the installation succeeded or not, because this seems to be like a very mature and good program, so let's check it out. Okay, so this program actually looks a little intimidating by the first look. Maybe it is a good idea to first check out the description on the website, at least the getting started page. I will move the compositor to my second screen, and well, let's see what can I do, what can I accomplish with Cinerella. Okay, so this software is much more complicated than I thought. It is very unintuitive, so I will take a break, eat some watermelon, and read the documentation because I got stuck. Okay, I will be perfectly honest with you. This was not a nice experience. So a lot of weird shortcuts, like undo is not Control Z, it's just Z, which confused the hell out of me for a long time because it's not Control Z. I was pressing like the U button like in Vim for some reason. There are some kind of effects I can do, for example this scale effect. So I want to change it to 4.9. I want to change it to something else, and if I move my mouse cursor out, I cannot type that. So I have to keep my mouse cursor here if I want to change it. It's a very, very frustrating experience working with this. And so I found no way to insert like a black rectangle that I did in Blender. So what I did is I just added the same video file twice and just decrease the contrast to 0, or rather the brightness to 0 to get the black squares. The transitions don't jive well with the other effects. So there is one of the pictures is upside down because it was like when you take a picture with your phone on the other direction, and it actually just takes the picture upside down but puts in like a tag to show which is the original direction. And some of the video editors, they don't care about the tag, so the picture is loaded upside down. So I have to apply some effect to turn it back. And not just that, neither of the effects I can put on the clips there will work well with the transition effects. And so unfortunately the documentation is very hard to process and very hard to search in the documentation for specific problems. I found very little independent tutorial materials on YouTube. So while Blender is also not an easy program to get into, but there are a bunch of tutorials on YouTube, and even if you use like a tutorial for 6-7 years ago, you can basically figure out based on that how to do video editing in Blender. In Cinerella, I spent considerable time to figure out this, and well, I did not manage to. Okay, so next in the line after Cinerella we are checking out Flowblade. So Flowblade promises a fast, precise and a stable experience. So let's check out how can I create my video in this program. Okay, so Flowblade has a seemingly simple look. I can maybe select all. Yes, so I can add the stuff there. Yeah, well, file profile change. Yeah, it automatically changed to 50 FPS, which is good. It found which is the largest FPS. Okay, let me see if I can use a second monitor. Great, so now I set up the two monitor for my workflow. So let's try to make the video in Flowblade. So actually making the first part of the video was a little frustrating, but nothing special, because so editing the clips and resizing them and moving them back and forth, it's a pleasurable experience after Cinerella because it's just I just grab the edge and just pull it. The only confusing part yet was trying to make the composition of the video, like what kind of compositoring should I select so I can have the overlay and I could make the picture-in-picture perfectly. So that part was very nice. It could be a little more intuitive, but I didn't have to read any documentation to do this until this point. I was basically just clicking and trying different compositors and figuring out which one is the one that does exactly what I want it to do. So let's try to finish this video now. I finished with the video and now I'm rendering the project. So the first two programs, Blender and Kdenlive, I did not have any stability issues with that. So the last one, Cinerella, it froze on me a few times, but anyways, this one, Flowblade, did not freeze up, but I had some trouble with keyframing some of the effects because I would set up the keyframe to 100% and then it would not change that keyframe but would change the previous one, so I had to save the file, close the program and open again, stuff like that, but in general it was a very smooth experience. So what was my biggest issue with Flowblade? So I had biggest issue was probably to managing the transformation, like these overlays or whatever, the compositors, so to compose the video well into one another. My other problem was that for the life of me I couldn't figure out how to put more than 5 video tracks on top of each other, and I used up all the 5 in my first part with the video. But fortunately what I can do here is I create a new sequence and I can use a previous sequence as a composition for in a video track. So basically what I can do is I can like do these 5-track compositions in a sequence and then use just one as like one object and then just put it in one of the tracks on here. So basically this is a non-issue. Basically Flowblade, it's very intuitive, so I think we can move on to our next candidate. So after we finished our exploration of Flowblade, the next one will be Olive. And well, they say that it's a fully featured alternative to high-end professional video editing software, so we might be able to do quite a lot with it, so I mean, let's give it a try. So Olive greets us with a very friendly user interface, just telling us that it is a free and open source video editing program licensed under GNU GPL, but it's in alpha stage and can crash anytime, so I will have to save my projects quite often, and so you have to bear it in mind that this is not a finished software product yet. Change to a... Maybe I can move it to a second screen with my... Yeah, luckily I have a key combination to move the window to my second screen, so I could just turn on the full screen viewer option and just move it to my other screen. So let's start editing the video. At this moment I am rendering the file I made in Olive, and I am 100% amazed by this project. So I could make this this test file faster in Olive, which I literally, this was the first time I've ever seen this program, and I could make this test file faster than I could do it in Blender or Kdenlive, which I have used before. So I finished with rendering the file, so let's take a look at this. So this is basically what I really love about this program, is that this interface is very clean, very simple, and it does everything. So we have this magnet link for a magnet link which is like snapping. So if I turn this off, I can just scrub through the timeline and just move wherever. But if I turn it on, it will automatically snap to the edges. What is also very good, that some basic things like position, scale, and rotation, these things, like the size of the videos, we could do with both with drag and drop and also directly by changing the numbers. So when I have a keyframe, I would want to be able to... Oh, there is a graph editor. Okay, I didn't check this. And I can switch to Bezier curves, which is amazing. This is what I like to do in Blender too, and I can just dock it here, and I don't want to check the sequence viewer because I have it on the other screen. Yeah, I like Olive. This is a very good, very well made program. It's only in the alpha stage, so be mindful of that, but it's good. So we will move on to our next contender. Okay, so the next video editor we are going to take a look at is going to be the OpenShot video editor, which has been designed to be simple, powerful, and beautiful. So instead of taking a look below at the homepage at the user interface, let's start this program. Well, okay, so this is our user interface. And well, the first thing I want to do is get my video preview. There are these small icons at the interface which I can use to pop out any window separately, and let's try to... Can I resize it? Yes, so I just try to fit it on my second monitor to fit my workflow. And well, so let's get working on the dummy project and let's see how it goes. Okay, so I finished editing this video and, well, this was not the worst experience. Far from it. Actually, this is a very simple program comparatively to the other ones I've tried. It is very straightforward. It really tries to focus on the casual user, in my opinion. It has this kind of old school Windows Movie Maker vibe to it, if you know what I mean. But it also offers some very nice features to really fine-tune your editing. But I am not really satisfied how the keyframing of like the animating some properties work, and I will show you in a minute. Okay, so let's take a look at what I mean by a little troublesome handling the keyframe. So here I wanted to make a transition from this kind of the picture-in-picture to the next image, which is like should be this full screen image of the sea here. And what I instead ended up having, and let me just move this video preview so you can just see it on my screencast. So what I did is I figured that I should put the alpha channel keyframe here, because it is not trivial to move like frame by frame here. I misplaced the 0 keyframe there, and there is a 1 keyframe right before that. So this is kind of the transition. So the transition got screwed up here due to that. And the problem is that if you have one of these values to set something, like for example here we have the scaling, and you try to change the scaling. So instead of 2, I want to change the scaling to like, I don't know, 1.5. Then instead of changing it for the whole strip, it inserts a new keyframe. So it is a little confusing for that. So for transitions, I usually just use the keyframing the alpha channel. But so you can see, because they offer, let me show you how you do it. So I can just grab this one and put, so the two strips overlap, and I can add a fade transition, and well, I need to fit this fade transition there, and so it will do the crossfade, but it does not work if your two strips don't have the same dimensions. So let's have 1 and the 2, and the transition get added by itself. You can see that the second image is fading in. So the second image is fading in properly, and then but the one in the background, so the first image just disappears suddenly at the end. So that's why I just used the alpha channel and keyframed that to create the fade in and fade out effect. So that's good, but using these keyframes is complicated. Anyways, I could do everything. I could actually, to create this picture-in-picture with the black frames around the picture-in-picture, I could use an effect. So I could get this bars effect. The bars effect was like dragged with the mouse on the video strip, and I double-click this new icon that appears, and then I can add it on the left side of the screen. This effect called the bar. Okay, so that is basically OpenShot. I think I can call it a success. So let's move on to the next video editor we are going to take a look at. And so the next thing we are taking a look at is going to be Pitivi, which is kind of trying to be a GNOME, integrated to the GNOME desktop they have their stated goal that they believe that they want to allow everyone on the planet to be able to express themselves through the art of filmmaking, which with tools they can own and improve. Very nice tagline. It also gives out this kind of Windows Movie Maker vibe, which is actually, I don't think it should be used as like a pejorative. I use it as a good thing, because if you are a beginner and you just want some basic tools to create your family videos, this might be a good tool. So let's take a look how it looks in real life. Well, so for integrating with the GNOME desktop, it totally just uses... I think this is actually the first video editor software I look at that actually uses the system theme for theming. Okay, so let's start a new project. Let's see how it looks like. Oh, there is an effect library here. Nice. Well, what I want to do is, can I please use my second screen for something? Why is it transcoding assets? So basically, probably it cannot deal with the different frame rates natively, so it will just transcode the video files are pulled in to the common frame rate. And that is very smart, because in Blender, for example, I have to do that manually. So let me just start working with this, and we will see how I do with Pitivi. At this moment we are rendering the final video. I am a little bit disappointed in this software. It seems like very sluggish sometimes. Keyframe handling for the alpha channel is a little weird. It's very hard to place different clips, alpha channels in the same exact frame. Seems user-friendly. Well, it seems like this kind of movie maker style, but I think it is not as intuitive as, for example, OpenShot was. So what I wanted to show you here is that, so I put the playhead somewhere, and for example, I want to match the alpha channels for these two clips. That I can just select the clip. Basically, I can see the keyframes placed on top of the clips, and whenever I just put the playhead where it is, maybe I want to zoom in and I want to place the playhead here. So now I want to put the same exact position on the other clip, but I click here and now the playhead is moved. So, well, in this case, because it's both, one is starting, the other is finishing, I can just try to find the edges of the clips, but far from ideal. So here I have clips which I want to fade out at the same point, and it's very, very, very non-ideal, to say the least. And I cannot animate the transformation. I can animate the alpha channel, but the transformation is not working. So I found a blog post that says actually that these transformations, you should be able to use the keyframes there, but it is not there on the actual program. It's not there. And not just that, if I move one of my clips from one of the layer to the other one, it loses the transformation information in. So let's check this one. I move it up, and now the transformation information is lost. What is this? Well, what I can at least say in the defense of Pitivi is that it didn't have any trouble with any of my files. It handled the different frame rate videos quite well. It handled the images quite well. So the next thing is a Shotcut. And Shotcut is described as a free open source cross-platform video editor, which, seems to be also promising a sleek, intuitive interface with wide format support and device and transport options and whatnot. And so let's take a look and let's compare this one to the previous ones. Okay, so now we have opened Shotcut. Start figuring out how to use it. Oh, and because I used this, I tried this software out briefly, but I did not use it extensively. It already remembered my true screen setup. I like it. So let's start working with this piece of software. Okay, so now we are rendering our project in Shotcut, and I found working with this program quite good. It's not as straightforward as the previous two applications were. It is a little more complex as it comes to the user interface, but I didn't need to look up anything. I could find all the effects I needed. The keyframing works quite well. I can edit the graphs of the keyframes directly. It is very easy to edit everything like exactly at the frame I want to go to. The cursor or the playhead intelligently goes to like edits, and that makes it very easy to synchronize effects on different tracks. So this is like my biggest issue, that the properties and playlist and filters window are just at the same spot here. So I can add, like, if I want to add multiple filters, then what it will look like is like this. I cannot animate them together. I have to animate them separately. I think here in the keyframe section. So here, for example, the size and position, I just see the keyframes. I can't edit the graphs of the X and Y coordinates separately. It's something that I would do in Blender, for example. It has the functions to jump to the next keyframe and jump to the previous keyframe, and I can just trace the playhead if I want to add additional keyframes. It's not the most simple thing, but I think it's quite intuitive enough that if you have some experience with video editing, you will find what you need. The filters, adding new filters can be a little, you have to go through all these filters to check out what is exactly that's available here that you can add then to your current track, like that. And so this program also handled the different frame rate profiles quite well. The only thing I would say is missing is a transition between clips. So there were programs where I needed to use this kind of manipulating with the opacity just to because in the certain, like the different aspect ratio images, the crossfade effects did not really work well. But in general, I prefer if I can use that, and I don't have to do in like every transition. I don't have to separately adjust the opacity values, which I had to do in Shotcut. Thank you for watching all those 40 minutes of me getting some hands-on experience with all these different free and open source non-linear video editing programs. And as I promised at the beginning of the video, which you might notice was recorded on a different day with a different shirt, here comes my top list of this top 8 FOSS NLVEs. So I am trying to compare these software based on the ease of use, their stability, their functionality, and I will also consider the optimal use case for these. So in this top list I mostly consider like an amateur hobbyist use of video editing, so it's not professional or semi-professional, because I don't think that most of my viewers are professional movie editors. But if you are a hobbyist, you enjoy video editing like me, then you should consider these programs, I think. And just as a notice that even though I will express some negative opinions here, we have to always remind ourselves that all of these free and open source projects are maintained and developed by volunteers, mostly, who are supported by other enthusiasts, sometimes in the coding, sometimes by monetarily, but a lot of people put in a lot of time and effort into these programs, and they don't get like a huge monetary gain of it, and they offer this software for free. So, you know, sometimes you got what you paid for. But anyways, some of these software really is a good job from the programmers, so please keep that in mind. And also, this is only my opinion, and this opinion is based on this time point, and we know sometimes this software get abandoned, sometimes they get a big influx of users and maintainers, and suddenly a lot of bugs get fixed. So whenever you are watching this video, this list might be different, and some of my opinions might be, you know, not aged well in that context. So let's start with our list from the bottom up. So number 8 is going to be Cinerella. So Cinerella is very highly customizable as far as the interface goes, and it really offers some powerful tools, but I'm not really sure how useful those are for the amateur and the hobbyists, especially when the interface itself is very complicated, and it can even scare away unexperienced users. And there are some frustrating issues with it, and the lack of detailed and searchable documentation is also unfortunate. I had some stability issues with the version that I am using. This is developed in a rolling release, so any of these problems can be fixed, could have been fixed by the time you are watching this video. But so I also had some problem with missing and poorly implemented features which concern this kind of amateur use case and not the power user case. So number 7 is Pitivi, which is a nice and simple program. It's very simple to make some very simple stuff. So even it offers the very good drag and drop capabilities if you are trying to put like overlays on top of each other, like for example, you can see my web camera on top of this presentation, so that kind of things. And there are some cons, of course. It has a very sluggish handling, and it's kind of weird how it moves the playhead whenever you click somewhere on the timeline, and it lacks a lot of features. So even for the amateur use case, I think this software is only suitable for like the very, very basic needs. But for people who don't really care much about video editing, just want to, you know, maybe edit something together quickly, this software could be good. But this is not really high on my list for these cons mostly. So number 6 was OpenShot for me because of its clean, intuitive interface and many options, or many basic and advanced effects that it offers. It can be a good choice for some people, but for me, this confusing handling of keyframes and effect options is a very big con. It's a very big no-no, because I like to know when I'm changing a keyframe, when I'm adding a keyframe, or changing an option globally for an effect, and this is confusing in OpenShot. So number 5, Flowblade, is very similar on my list with OpenShot, because the interface and the effects that these two software offer, I think, are like almost on the same level in my opinion. But so in Flowblade's case, the keyframing would be better than OpenShot if these weird bugs would be repaired. And so the limited number of tracks is something I cannot wrap my head around. The compositing is also weird. You can figure it out, but I don't think it's really intuitive and doesn't really make much sense from my point of view. And there is this indirect drag and drop for like positioning the overlays, which I think it's sufficient. It can be confusing or unintuitive for some users who just want to jump in quickly, edit some video quickly, and just have a results fast. So number 4 is Olive. So in a totally subjective point of view, I think Olive could easily be like number 1 if it was not in the alpha stage, because it has a very clean interface which is highly customizable. The basic options are very easily accessible, basic effects. The drag and drop mechanics for positioning and sizing these overlays and picture-in-picture style things is very easy. It's very well implemented. There is a good range of available stuff. The keyframe handling is very good, but yeah, it's only in the alpha stage and it has some troubles with some file formats. So if the development of this software goes well, then I think it will easily climb up this ladder soon. So number 3 is Blender, which is still my favorite choice for editing videos, but you know, because it offers this precise control over everything. You can have like frame and even like pixel accuracy in everything you do in Blender. The interface is very highly customizable, so whatever workflow you prefer, you can fine-tune this software for it. It has a very large user base and a very dedicated development team actually. So Blender Foundation is supported by even corporations, and they have enough cash inflow from donations and some of their paid services that they can actually maintain paid employees, paid developers, which really you can see how well the development is going with this project. Also, because of the wide user base, mostly in the professional and like semi-pro range of users, there are a lot of tutorials on the internet. You can find Q&As about how to do anything in Blender, easily searchable. It's very good, but the interface is very complicated. There is no drag and drop support for stuff, even though the graph editor is very powerful, but you have to get to that point where you are confident using this. So the interface can be very scary for hobbyists and first-time users. So if you want to use Blender as a video editor, be prepared for watching tutorials on YouTube and reading about it before you manage to do anything useful. It is not really built for every type of video editing. For example, the different aspect ratios and different frame rates can really make your life harder in Blender. So if you are a user who wants to stitch together videos that you recorded with your friends and everyone recorded with different phones, different camcorders, and no one cared about setting up the frame rates and things like that, then Blender might not be the optimal choice for you. But there are some use cases where I think Blender can easily get the first place, and for me, in my heart, Blender is the number 1. So number 2 is Shotcut, because it has a very nice beginner-friendly interface with many options and high customizability. The drag and drop for positioning and size is very easily usable for like the overlays and stuff like that. It offers a graph editor for keyframes, so even like a little more complicated things you can easily achieve in this software. So I think it is a good option for people who are like not really experienced in video editing yet, but want to do some little more sophisticated things than just stitching videos together. But this interface is kind of cluttered a bit for if you are doing advanced stuff. So I don't know, it's kind of a middle road, I guess, but it's worth trying out, I think. And number 1 is of course Kdenlive, which has a very intuitive user interface. It has powerful capabilities for both like this everyday or more advanced users. The drag and drop mechanics for positioning and size is very good. It is very popular in the Linux community, so probably you will be able to find tutorials or Q&As or for things if you cannot find them directly in the user interface, which, you know, I never needed to use anything on the internet to look up stuff for Kdenlive because I managed to do all the things I wanted to do in it easily. The cons for this piece of software is the rigid interface, which can hinder some more advanced work if you want to do that kind of things. The keyframe handling is kind of mediocre, so it's probably enough for your everyday hobby use, but for some more advanced stuff it can get frustrating a little. And there are a lot of rumors on the internet about stability problems. I don't know if that's true. I never had any stability problems with Kdenlive, but you know, some people say there are, so maybe keep that in mind. And so this concludes my presentation. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed today's video, consider giving me a like, or if you are interested in more Linux and free software related content, subscribe to the channel. I also have some playlists about Arch Linux, and well, if you have any opinions on today's topic or suggestions for other video editor software I might have left out, leave those in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye!